Fiona Solomon, and I'm the CEO of the Aluminium Stewardship Initiative. And in this webinar, I'd like to give you a brief introduction to ASI's governance. We have the ASI Governance Handbook, which we've released a new edition of after doing a formal ASI governance review this year. We had a first edition back in 2016, which we did a brief update in 2017. But this webinar highlights some key points from version 2, particularly for ASI members. The handbook is well worth a read and it's available on the ASI website. So let's start with an introduction to ASI, particularly its governance model. ASI is a not-for-profit public company that's limited by guarantee, and we've been incorporated in Australia under the Australian Corporations Act. We've also been registered as a charity by the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission, or the ACNC. ASI's constitution is the main corporate governance legal document that sets out our objects, what we aim to do as an organisation, what powers we have and who they're delegated to, what the responsibilities are of various governance groups within ASI, and how ASI is overall managed by the various aspects of our governance participants. The Governance Handbook, which we're going to focus more on in this webinar, is really intended as a user-friendly companion to the Constitution. Constitutions tend to be written in legalese, not necessarily very accessible for a quick read, and the ASI Governance Handbook aims to set out some of those key aspects of governance that might be of interest, as well as more day-to-day areas of guidance on things like culture and conduct, consensus-based decision-making, and what our aspirations are as an organisation overall. ASI is of course committed to complying with all relevant antitrust and competition laws throughout the world. We've adopted an antitrust compliance policy as a bylaw, and complying with that is a condition of continuing your participation in ASI. All of these documents are publicly available at the website address that you can see there, so you can find and read a copy of our Constitution, our Governance Handbook, and of course our antitrust compliance policy and other policies and bylaws that we've adopted. ASI is a membership-based organisation that's divided into 6 different membership classes. We have 3 full member classes: civil society, production and transformation, and industrial users, and 3 associate member classes, which are associations, general supporters, and downstream supporters. The full member industry classes, so that's production and transformation and industrial users, must achieve ASI certification for some part of their operations or organisation within 2 years of joining ASI. And while associate members, associations, general supporters and downstream supporters are not eligible to nominate candidates for the ASI board or the Standards Committee, they're of course welcome to share their expertise in ASI working groups and are eligible to vote in elections and other member resolutions. ASI's governance model is really one of working in partnership and collaboration. Those 6 ASI membership classes elect annually candidates to the ASI board and to the Standards Committee on 2-year terms. Those board oversees board committees and working groups, and the Standards Committee oversee working groups on specific standards, themes and topics. And working groups are open to all ASI members as well as some external stakeholders. ASI also has an Indigenous Peoples Advisory Forum, or IPAF, which represents the interests and concerns of affected Indigenous peoples in connection particularly with the aluminium value chain. And the ASI Secretariat works to support the work programs of all of these different groups and ASI's day-to-day work programs. So let's take a look at the different responsibilities of some of these key groups. The Board of Directors has a governance role, and so they oversee strategy, risk, finance, and compliance for the organisation. They also, of course, oversee the CEOs and the organisation's performance. They play a role to adopt ASI standards and bylaws, and they oversee subcommittees for governance, finance and audit, and legal. The Standards Committee's role is really obviously focused on standards themselves. So they approve and develop new and revised ASI standards and related guidance. They oversee working groups and stakeholder consultation processes that are related to standards development, and they also review outcomes and impacts from the ASI certification model, particularly with a view to understanding how future improvements can be made. ASI members as a whole, They vote and participate in the organisation. They have to approve any changes to the ASI constitution. They elect the representatives that sit on the ASI board and standards committee, and they vote on all member resolutions that are put to them. And finally, the ASI Secretariat is responsible for the operations of the organisation. We develop and implement ASI's strategy and operational plans. We run the day-to-day activities of ASI, and we support the board, committees, working groups, and IPAF's work programs through their various processes. Standards development is obviously a particular focus for ASI, being a standards and certification organisation, and there are a number of bodies that play important roles in this process. The ASI Secretariat oversees the technical drafting of new and revised standards, the management of processes such as stakeholder consultations, committees, working groups, and so on, and of course updating the website, communicating and maintaining appropriate records. The Standards Committee play an elected role on behalf of all ASI members to review drafts put to them, to have input and do some of their own drafting, to oversee consultation processes, and of course in the end to approve the final content of standards and related guidance. But there are a number of bodies that feed into that process. There are specific working groups that have technical input on thematic topics like greenhouse gas or human rights. There's a legal committee that reviews for any legal risks, including relating to our antitrust compliance policy. We have public consultation processes for all of our standard setting activities, and that provides an opportunity for broad stakeholder input into drafts and proposals that are put through those exercises. And of course, we have our Indigenous Peoples Advisory Forum, IPAF, that brings stakeholder input on issues of concern to Indigenous peoples. Once the ASI Standards Committee has approved the final content of a new or revised standard and associated guidance, that goes to the ASI board, who review the process that's been undertaken, assess for any material risks to ASI, including legal risk, and then make the decision to adopt those new and revised standards and have them applied by ASI members. So let's turn now to a code of conduct for ASI participants in our governance. When we conducted a governance review of ASI in 2019, we identified culture as a really critical governance issue for organisations of all types. So the new version of the Governance Handbook, issued in 2019, includes a whole new section on culture and conduct and a new ASI Code of Conduct that's included in Appendix 1. This Code of Conduct aims to support proper and effective governance in ASI's international, multi-stakeholder and multi-sector context, and it's been adapted from similar codes that are in place for other standards organisations such as ISO, the International Standards Organisation. The Code of Conduct is in two main parts. The first part, Part A, applies to everyone who participates in ASI's governance, including within the Secretariat, within the board and their subcommittees, within the legal committee, the standards committee, the various working groups that are active, IPAF, and within annual general meetings and other face-to-face ASI meetings. The second part, Part B, applies as well to every person who participates in the ASI Standards Committee and related working groups that are established to support standards development and revision processes. So let's have a look at what some of these principles are. The Part A that applies to everyone has 6 principles, and they are firstly to work for the net benefit of all ASI stakeholders when you're participating in ASI's governance, to respect other people that are participating in ASI, to uphold a professional meeting culture, to declare all relevant and material interests, to of course behave legally and ethically, and finally to support the Code of Conduct in action. And if you have any concerns as to whether that is being implemented appropriately, we encourage you to contact us. Part B of the Code of Conduct relates to the standards development process. So there's some specific extra criteria that apply here. And they are to, particularly where you're elected to a role, such as on the Standards Committee, to participate actively in the standards development process, to work to agree a clear purpose and work plans to carry that out, to uphold the consensus process, and finally to identify and work to resolve issues that often arise in standards development processes. There's plenty more detail on each of these principles within the Code of Conduct itself, and I encourage you to read it carefully and to work to implement it in practice. Let's turn now to nominating for election in either the board or the Standards Committee. The board structure comprises 8 directors. There are 2 from production and transformation members, 2 from industrial users members, 2 from civil society members, and there are also 2 independent directors that are appointed by those 6 directors who've been elected on a skills basis. Directors hold 2-year terms and they are rotating, so one member-based vacancy arises every year. The seats are filled by candidates through a nomination and election process, and all ASI members are eligible and encouraged to vote in those elections. The Standards Committee has a total of 24 committee members. There are 6 from production and transformation members, 6 from industrial user members, 10 from civil society members, and 2 that are nominated from the Indigenous Peoples Advisory Forum. So that means the committee has half of its seats filled by industry representatives and half filled by non-industry representatives. The committee candidates are also on 2-year terms, but they're elected as a whole every 2 years. And again, as for the board, all ASI members are eligible and encouraged to vote in those elections for all of the seats that are open. In 2019, in the Governance Handbook update, some new training requirements were introduced by the ASI board for Standards Committee members. This is because the Standards Committee plays a really critical role on behalf of all ASI members to oversee the technical content of the ASI standards and all of the supporting documents. So effective from 2020, there's a requirement to undertake ASI training to support the knowledge and effectiveness of Standards Committee participants. So if you're a candidate who would like to seek election to the ASI Standards Committee from 2020, you need to undertake ASI's training or online training before nominating for election. So if you're considering nominating next year or in the future and haven't yet undertaken any training, make sure you give yourself some time to complete that training before January or February of a given election year. So what is the training requirement precisely? Well, it would be fulfilled by either participating in a full day in-person training session or the online equivalent at any time in the last 3 years before the nomination and election process takes place. We will be putting in place a requirement for refresher training at least every 5 years, or that could be more often where that's triggered by a standards revision or the need to meet particular requirements for an election cycle, and that would be determined by the ASI Governance Committee. If nominations for election to the Standards Committee are received from any candidates who haven't completed the training requirement, preference will be given first to candidates who have met the training requirement. So again, it's really important that you take the time, particularly before 2020 or 2022, which will be the next major cycles for election, to either undertake that training requirement online or to see what's coming up in terms of in-person sessions. Finally, let's turn to the member voting processes for elections in particular. So nominations and elections take place in the first quarter of every year, and each full member organisation is eligible to nominate to a vacancy 1 director candidate and 1 Standards Committee candidate, but they can't be the same person. Nomination forms are sent to each organisation's primary contact. If you don't know who your primary contact is or would like to know or make sure it's up to date, please contact us at info@aluminiumstewardship.org. We will hold elections when the number of candidates exceeds the number of vacancies in a particular class or in a particular forum. And so all members, full and associate, are eligible and encouraged to vote in elections. We really strongly urge you to take your vote and help to decide who represents different membership classes and ASI as a whole on both the board and the Standards Committee, which are really critically important roles for ASI's governance. We have a cumulative voting model in ASI where each ASI member has 100 votes to allocate per membership class. So let's consider that these are candidates that are applying for a board seat on the ASI board. There might be 4 candidates who've nominated for production and transformation vacancy as a board director. You can use your 100 votes for that class to either put that all towards 1 candidate, to allocate it across your 2 preferred candidates, or any other possible combination. And the same goes for the civil society vacancy and the industrial users vacancy. ASI also uses voting weights to ensure a balance of interests across ASI's membership classes. That means that no matter the number of members in each individual class, the weights apply to the aggregate cast votes. So the weights of production and transformation are 30%, civil society are 30%, and industrial and downstream supporters combined are 30%, which means that the aggregate votes in each of those classes are weighted equally. The remaining 10% is split between associations and general supporters, and we have those weights in the Governance Handbook in Table 2. So to find out more about ASI's governance, I really encourage you to download and review the ASI Governance Handbook in some more detail. It's a good read if you're interested in governance, and it helps to provide some more general guidance and a sense of ASI's aspirations around issues like culture, conduct, and consensus-based decision-making. If you have any specific questions about governance, please get in touch with me at the email address there. Of course, visit our website to find the handbook, and you're welcome to join our mailing list if you have not already done so. Thank you very much for your attention, and we hope to see you or a colleague nominating in ASI elections soon.